get something that's a little bit more like made in metal. Yeah. It's cute.
Attention. Good evening. Call the City Council meeting of October 28th to order. Start with the flag salute, which Councilor Cabrales, will you please lead us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Councillor Cornwell,
Present.
Councillor Cabrales,
Here.
Councillor Schaub,
Here.
Councillor Wilk,
Here.
Councillor Cantu,
Here.
Councillor Morris,
I'm here.
Mayor Lonergan.
Here. Thank you.
Heather, you need to turn the camera on.
So, a couple announcements. City Hall will be closed on Monday, Veterans Day, November 11th, in observance of Veterans Day, which means that our November 11th City Council meeting is going to be moved one day to November 12th, to Tuesday evening. And that will be, because of the holidays, the only meeting of which we have in November at this time. We do not have any appointments. I do not have any community government organizations. I do have a proclamation regarding Domestic Violence Awareness Month for October 2024. Whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month is observed every October, aiming to raise awareness about the widespread issue of domestic violence, educate our communities on prevention, and support survivors. Whereas the impact of domestic violence affects millions across the nation and extends beyond individuals, reaching into families and communities. And whereas in the last year, Marion County has experienced at least 3 domestic violence homicide crimes. And whereas the Marion County District Attorney's Office received 1,283 law enforcement reports of domestic violence and filed 987 domestic violence cases. And whereas the Marion County courts received 1,875 requests for protective orders. And whereas the Center for Hope and Safety received 38,417 contacts to their program and provided 10,170 nights of shelter. And whereas the Marion County Victim Assistance Division provided services to over 800 victims of domestic violence, walking alongside them and giving them a voice in the criminal justice process. And whereas we as individuals can make a difference by speaking up and reaching out to help victims and survivors. Now therefore, I, Frank J. Lonergan, Mayor of the City of Woodburn, hereby proclaim October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Woodburn, and resolve to honor those affected by domestic violence, promote resources, and encourage actions to end the cycle of violence. So, a very tough topic, but a important topic that we make it aware, and we all do what we can to make a difference. Pardon?
What is this high-pitched? That's what Jesse's doing. It's Jesse's fault.
I would say the opposite, but
Caught it.
I'd like to invite Jane Downing and Tammy, Victims Assistants, to come up and help us out with our awareness this month.
Hey. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Pammy Guerra. I'm the Victim Assistance Manager at the Marion County District Attorney's Office, filling in for Paige Clarkson, our District Attorney. She wanted to be here tonight but had something detain her, and so she asked me to come in her place. This is my first time, and so I'm really excited to get to be a part of this opportunity to bring awareness to domestic violence. And to keep myself on track, I did write out what I wanted to say to you. And you know, I'm here with the Executive Director of Center for Hope and Safety, Jane Downing. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here to bring awareness to domestic violence in our community. I really appreciate the close relationship we have with our community partners like Center for Hope and Safety and all of the good work that they do for survivors of domestic violence. As you can see from the proclamation, in the last year there was 1,283 law enforcement reports of domestic violence and 987 cases filed with the District Attorney's Office. There were 1,875 requests for protective orders, and the Victim Assistance Division provided services to over 800 victims of domestic violence. Domestic violence is the largest caseload in our office. And these are just the numbers we are aware of. We know there are more victims out there who may not feel safe to reach out for help, and we hope our existence gives them some hope and a place to go when they are ready. Although these numbers can be discouraging, this is why collaboration with our community partners and with law enforcement agencies is so important in order to continue to assist those going through the justice system and to educate our community. Every day, the district attorney, victim advocates provide court accompaniment, explain victim rights, and connect victims to community resources that can assist victims beyond the justice system. We also table community outreach events in hopes of educating our community and maybe even giving some hope to a victim who may not realize victim services exist. I'm thankful for the collaboration efforts in our community to provide services to victims and survivors of crime. And I want to hand it over now to Jane and let her share with you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, members of the public. I'm Jane Downing. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Hope and Safety. And you have some big numbers of how many folks we helped last year, victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking. And we cover all of Marion County. But I wanted to give you some really specific numbers for your area. So just in the last quarter, so this is just 3 months worth of stats, 74 households from this area were helped by the Center for Hope and Safety. A total of 412 contacts to our program, and we sheltered 3 families just in this last quarter from this area. And so every day we are here thanks to the great partnership that we have with the City of Woodburn. So we have an office here where people can come in and get support immediately from bilingual, bicultural advocates who can support them through whatever they're going through, help them with protection orders, help them get into shelter if that's what's needed. We have a very thriving housing program, so we're also able to help folks with fees and deposits and paying some rent until they can become self-sufficient. And so we're doing all kinds of things in the community where we're making sure that we're there for victims and survivors. And I do want to say I'm really grateful to Pammy and to our DA. We work really closely together, and that is unusual for a lot of areas in the state of Oregon. Their victim assistance program and their community nonprofit don't always work really closely together. And so we are really proud that we refer to each other on a daily basis. Here's some folks who can help you go through the system. Here's some folks that can help you with protection orders. We both of our agencies do those. And so we work really closely together to make sure that there's a safety net for survivors of violence. And so I'm really honored to be here tonight with Pammy and honored to be a part of this community. I have to tell you, I love your bridge more than anything, and lit up purple, it just looks incredible. Every time I drive by that bridge, I'm like, we should have more of those. They're just, it's something that really spreads that awareness. So I want to say thank you to you all for doing the proclamation, for all the work that you do to partner with programs like ours and make a difference for very vulnerable families. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Jane. Tammy, thank you so much for coming down. We certainly appreciate the partnership we've had with Marion County for many years, and then look forward to the future. And Jane, I know you've been executive director for many years, and I can't begin to thank you for all you've done for the Center for Hope and Safety. So
thank you.
Questions from the council?
Mayor, if you'll indulge me, I have to say this is actually my last Domestic Violence Awareness Month presentation. I'm retiring.
I've
so,
heard that.
So this is very wonderful for me for this to be my last one because you all are very special.
Well, we wish you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge that having a presence, a physical presence here in Woodburn is such a great asset for our community, for those that are in great need. And, you know, sometimes getting to Salem is not that easy. And so to have the center have an office, a facility right here in town is just a wonderful thing.
And we're hoping to just do more in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So it is not on the agenda, but the agenda is always subject to changes. And so, Chief Pilcher, would you mind please coming up to the stand? Since tonight is, I believe, your last council meeting with our fair city, and I just want to take a moment to thank you for your service. Thank you for putting yourself out there, putting yourself in front of your team, and leaving a team that's very well trained behind as you move on. I believe Woodburn's an extremely safe city, and I thank you for all your work you have done to make us that way. Any comments with that? We have a small token of our appreciation. When you think of us in the future, and you will, and we will certainly be thinking of you, and think of us with kind thoughts that we are always thinking of what you've done for us.
Well,
we appreciate it.
It should be me that's thanking you and the council and the city for giving me this opportunity. It is a privilege to be a police officer, and it is certainly an honor to be the chief of police in this fine city. And so the thanks should come from me. I thank all of the city government officials and fellow employees with whom I work. I told one person or a group of people that it's their fault that I was maybe going to another job. If this job had been so awful, I wouldn't try it. But it's been so positive, so that I will try something else moving forward. But like I said, it should be me thanking you for this opportunity. And I thank all those with whom I work, and I'm very confident in the abilities of those who will be taking my place, if only on the interim position. But I'm very confident in Deputy Chief Milliken's ability, his experience here in Woodburn, and also his professional and formal education. So I'm being well replaced.
Well, you're leaving a good team behind.
Yes.
But, yeah, again, thank you for all you've done for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, next up, we do not have any communications. Next up is business from the public. This allows the public to introduce items to the council consideration that is not already on the agenda. Comment time will be limited to 3 minutes. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak to the council on any item that is not on the agenda, please come forward now and state your name. And not seeing anybody, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. The city reporter is asked to read the items that are on the consent agenda. Any item can be removed from the consent calendar and added to general business at the request of any councilor. Adoption of the consent agenda requires a motion, a second, then a vote. So, will you please?
The items on the consent agenda are as follows: Woodburn City Council minutes of October 14th, 2024, monthly financial report, acceptance of easement and right-of-way at 2355 North Boones Ferry Road, acceptance of easements at 2385 Sprague Lane, Red Flex report for July through September 2024, and intergovernmental agreement with Woodburn Urban Renewal Agency for loan of $1,360,000 to be used for the agency's purchase of the Young Street property.
Thank you. Any councilors wish to take anything off? I would entertain a motion.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
There's moved and seconded. All in favor, signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed with the same. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have a public hearing, or legislative amendment 2024, LA-2401, and public hearing for adoption of comprehensive plan, the map amendment to incorporate previously established urban reserve area. So I will open the public hearing. Moving on to any declarations that anyone has. Then I will give it to our staff report.
I'm Chris Kerr, Community Development Director. I'm just going to introduce her now to this is her project. She's been moving it along, and I'm kind of following and riding her coattails as it goes forward.
Thanks, Chris.
You just talk. You don't have to.
It's on?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Renata Weekly, Special Projects Director. This will be a short presentation and follow-up from the work session that we had with the council in September and your public hearing. So, as Chris mentioned, we'll cover some background on why we're holding this public hearing, and then I'll do my best to walk you in the audience through the staff report, exhibits, and 5 attachments, and Exhibit B. Okay, so what you see here is the urban growth boundary that was adopted in 2015 as part of the city's last urban growth boundary expansion. That process in 2015 was to meet housing and employment land needs, so some residential lands and some industrial and commercial land. What we're discussing tonight is related to employment land only, so commercial and industrial land need. In 2023, council may remember that we held public hearings relating to adoption of the economic opportunity analysis and buildable land inventory. So that work was completed in 2023 and is adopted and finalized. And this action that was directed by City Council is to implement or address that deficit in land need. What you have before you tonight, before the City Council, is an amendment to the comprehensive plan map. This is considered a Type 5 legislative decision under the Woodburn Development Ordinance. The Planning Commission holds a public hearing and issues a recommendation on any legislative amendment to the City Council. I'll reference the timeline and where we're at in that timeline, but the Planning Commission did hold their public hearing on October 10th, closed that meeting, and made a recommendation for the City Council. As a matter of procedure, I'll just note that the staff report and its attachments are hereby entered into the record. Briefly, what this legislative amendment does not cover, if approved, the urban growth boundary map will be amended, and you have that as Exhibit B to the staff report. That's what the map would look like if approved by the City Council. That does not mean that these lands will develop immediately. I think that's important for the property owners within the urban reserve area or adjacent property owners to realize. Future annexations of the area once brought into an urban growth boundary are a separate land use action, and that typically requires petition or application by the property owners themselves. No change to the city limits will occur at this time. A zone map amendment also applies at the time of a potential annexation. In addition, the Woodburn Development Ordinance does require, prior to or as part of annexation, master planning. So that's a condition of annexation. So there's quite a bit of work that's still required even when the city amends their urban growth boundary, and that's at the petition and initiative of those property owners. In addition, and we'll look at some maps tonight, state statute requires that the city prioritize sequentially urban reserve areas prior to any other lands as part of an urban growth boundary expansion. So that's what we're looking at tonight. 237 acres that was established in 2015 as part of that comprehensive plan map amendment. The city, and I have some slides that will remind the city council of what's in our economic opportunity analysis. But the city will still have additional need to address, and I'm going to move this quickly. If the urban reserve area is brought into the urban growth boundary, 237 acres, the city will still have a deficit of 106.6 acres of commercial land and 36 acres of industrial land that you'll need to address. That will be a separate land use action. When the city council directed staff to initiate this process, you directed staff to start the legislative amendment process for the urban reserve area because we had a zero large lot industrial. That was an immediate priority for the city. The process for where else we will go after urban reserve areas requires quite a bit of public outreach, engineering work, and it's a timely process.
Do you have some ideas, though, where we might go and look?
We can look at some maps.
Yeah.
The state tells us where we have to look, and then there's additional study work that's required after that. So I just want to be clear that after this process, council will at some point in the future tell staff to initiate the next process, and this will not address all of our needs. Briefly, the timeline, we had work sessions with City Council and Planning Commission in September. Planning Commission held their public hearing on October 10th, and the Planning Commission received testimony from 4 parties, all in support, and their recommendation to City Council was unanimous for approval. In your staff report, the testimony that we received in writing is attachment 101 to the staff report, and we have 4 property owners, 3 within the urban reserve area and 1 adjacent to the urban reserve area that provided testimony. This is where we are tonight. I'll note that since the Planning Commission hearing and the close of that record, we haven't received additional written testimony, or that would have been entered into the record tonight for you. So this is the City Council's public hearing and first reading of the ordinance, if you so choose. I don't know if I know how to go back. In the timeline, so I advance the slides. If the City Council makes a recommendation tonight and you conduct first reading of the ordinance, because this is an urban growth boundary that impacts the city of Woodburn, but in addition, Marion County's boundary and their comprehensive plan map, the next step is to go before the Marion County Board of Commissioners. They need to duly notice and hold a public hearing. So if the council makes a decision tonight, we will submit our record to the Marion County staff and Board of Commissioners, request that they hold a hearing. And if they make a decision for concurrence, we bring it back to you, to City Council for second reading of the ordinance. So we still have some process involved. We have been working very closely with Marion County staff. The commissioners have been informed. We've received feedback from Marion County in our process. So they are aware that this is coming their way. Just a reminder of the work that was done in 2023 is part of a buildable land inventory and economic opportunity analysis. You see this is the total 20-year deficit. So the 106.6 acres that I referenced earlier, the urban reserve area, it was decided in 2015 that that land will purely be Southwest Industrial Reserve. So of the 272 acres in our EOA, Economic Opportunity Analysis of land need, we can fix or meet some of that deficit, 237 acres in the urban reserve area, but we'll still have a deficit. And we are not addressing any of that commercial land need as part of this legislative amendment process. So more work to be done. Again, this is work that was completed 2023 and not part of the discussion or findings before the City Council tonight. As part of an urban growth boundary expansion, the state requires an evaluation and findings related to compliance with several administrative statutes, Oregon statewide planning goals, Oregon revised statutes, the Woodburn, your city's own comprehensive plan, and urban growth coordination agreements with the applicable county, in this case, Marion County. Exhibit A includes findings of compliance for all of these planning goals, compliance with our comprehensive plan, and the coordination agreement with Marion County. Staff made findings related to this compliance, presented it to the Planning Commission concurred, and that's what we're asking you to also find, that you as a city council are finding we are in compliance with what the state requires us to do. In addition, we know that Oregon Revised Statute 197.298 identifies urban reserve areas as the sequential first priority for inclusion in a UGB, so that's where we're looking. We're required to go there first, and we're meeting that process. So as part of Exhibit A, pages A4 through A15, because there's a lot of statewide planning goals we have to find in compliance, those are the pages in the staff report and exhibit that staff and the Planning Commission found we comply with the applicable statewide plan goals. In addition, 15, 16 through 19 don't comply. Most of those are coastal statewide plan goals. Pages A15 through A16 of the Exhibit A provide staff conclusions and supporting data related to findings of the city is complying with our own Woodburn development ordinance, including the procedures for notification. I'll also note that with support from city staff, Mackenzie, the legal counsel, Chris Kerr, we reviewed the interchange management area to make findings that expansion of our urban growth boundary could continue and would continue to comply with the Woodburn development ordinance that the city council has adopted. Findings related to the city's own comprehensive plan are on page A16. I won't read all of this text, but I just want to know that as part of the city's adopted comprehensive plan growth management policies, the city specifically said that Southwest Industrial Reserve shall be reserved exclusively for industrial uses, specifically large lots that can meet some of the need for a variety of different types of employment landing that we have in the community. So that area is specifically designated and protected in certain comprehensive plan goals and development ordinances, so that we can preserve that for the various types of needs that we have identified as a community to meet our employment land needs and types. Again, staff worked closely with Marion County staff on what applicable comprehensive plan goals for Marion County would apply here and whether we complied. They had an opportunity to review and comment on our findings. That was incorporated on pages A17 through A18. If City Council makes a decision tonight and directs us to move to Marion County Commissioners, their staff and the county commissioners will also have to find, along with you, that the urban growth boundary expansion complies with their own comprehensive plan goals and policies. In addition to the text for compliance with development ordinance, comprehensive plan, and statewide planning goals, you have several maps, attachments 1 through 4. We have Marion County's comprehensive plan and Marion County's comprehensive plan and zoning maps. On each of these maps, attachments 1 through 4, the urban reserve area is shown in a crosshatch pattern for you. These maps are incorporated, while I reference the state statute that says you shall go to your urban reserve area first, it was both Marion County and the state's recommendation that we incorporate these maps. When we first met with them, they weren't there. And the reason is that, well, where will you go, where will you be going next? So the state says a 1 mile buffer, we need to look at all those lands. It was their recommendation that we incorporate those maps at this point. They're there on the record. As I referenced, Exhibit B shows the comprehensive plan map amendment as it would look pending City Council's approval. Attachment 5 for efficiency measures. This was part of the process of the economic opportunity analysis that we worked with Johnson Economics. It is not adopted into the city's comprehensive plan, but the state does say, show us that you are efficiently using your lands within your current urban growth boundary before you look outward. And that was really clear to us when we looked at the buildable land, remaining land within the Woodburn boundary. We had 0 lots over, I believe it was 10 acres for commercial, and nothing larger than 20 acres for industrial. And for certain businesses, that's okay. But what was clearly found in the economic opportunity analysis is we had a deficit of certain land types that every community should and is required by state law to show that they have, especially since right now the state agency, Business Oregon, is showing a deficit of large lot industrial within our region, right? We have none shown. So we did a look at efficiency measures and how we're using employment land within our current urban growth boundary, and it's quite telling if you look at this exhibit or attachment 5 that the city is completing most, if not all, of these efficiency measures through your various urban renewal programs, the enterprise zones, your robust economic development department that works closely with business owners, recent reviews of setbacks and building heights in our industrial land. So while we aren't held to these efficiency measures, it was a good practice to go through and be able to show that the city really is doing a lot to make sure we're using our land efficiently. Here's the recommended motion. Again, tentative approval of legislative amendment 2401 to adopt a comprehensive plan map amendment based on the analysis and findings, Exhibit A, and hold the first reading of the ordinance to implement the amendment. First reading only, because then we pause, we make the request to Marion County, they go through their process, and assuming they concur, we bring it back to you for the second reading. So I just have a few more slides. This is the urban reserve area again, adopted in 2015 as part of that process. This is a nice aerial for the public to kind of get a sense of where it's located. And I'm going to just advance to the next slide for the recommended motion. So you can ask questions of Chris and I or Mackenzie, and then open it up for the public hearing.
Chris, you have anything to add to that?
I don't at all. I think it's odd to think that sort of our approach of grabbing the low-hanging fruit of the urban reserve to meet our required needs is taking us this long, and this is the easy work, right, to get to this point. But here we are. We feel pretty confident moving forward with it.
Thank you. Questions?
From my perspective, it doesn't seem like it was easy, so thanks to all the staff for the work that you guys put in. It seems like it was a big project. Do we have any indicator of like what kind of industries we're trying to put into place there? Or is that?
We have targeted industries. I believe we have between 9 and 11 targeted industries in our most updated economic opportunity analysis. That doesn't restrict the city to those types of industries, but we can, you as city council can direct economic development and other departments to market, engage with as such. I'll defer to Chris on what types of uses are allowed in the Southwest Industrial Reserve, because we are limited in who could be located there by the zone.
It's sort of interesting because we have a pretty engaged economic development department. Our economic development director, Jamie Jung, works really closely with the state. So what we get a lot of these sort of feelers out there from the state and these other regional groups who say we're looking for properties of this size located usually near transportation systems, et cetera. What kind of availability do you have? Right now in Oregon, that list gets very short because there's such a deficit of large lot industrial lands. And the same has generally been true here. This kind of opens the door for us to take some of those calls and vet these projects a little bit more as they come through instead of a big hard no. That's what we expect to have happen. That's how we brought in some of the larger employment operators that we've had recently. We're going to be opening up soon. That's sort of how a lot of those come in, right? We need the land available first.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you for all the work that you have done.
Yes.
Yeah, this has been well over almost 2 years. Been working on this. So next up, I will take testimony from the public. Yes, I do have a Greg Blazer. I'd like to come up to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening. I have property at the end of Parr Road at Butteville, and the reason that I'm for the project is there's several reasons. One, the county doesn't support us. One, we don't have, if we call the deputy or the sheriff department because of a problem, we might see them in 3 or 4 days. So that's one thing. We moved from the city to the county. I always had excellent results with the police in Woodburn, so I'm already aware of, most of the people have changed now, but from when I worked here before. But anyway, that's one of the reasons. Then the other reason that I'm interested in is I think the city is motivated to grow more for business opportunities and so on, as well as the next part of my thought is being on the corner there, we get to witness accidents at least once a week.
That's a tough intersection. It's a really tough
and
intersection.
it's getting worse by the day.
Yeah.
The amount of traffic is just going through the roof. And so hopefully something will get changed there, and I think the city is probably going to be more proactive.
Are you on the south end or the north end of that corner? Do you have the trailer?
We're on the west, yeah, I'm with Trailer World,
Yeah,
yes.
Trailer World, okay.
Yeah, and so those are mainly the reasons. I also want to see that get developed and see other businesses in the area there. That'll help us. So that's, but the rest of it really isn't so much that it's going to help us as it's going to help everybody that has to be in that area. So anyway, that's all I really had to say.
Any questions? Thank you very much for coming
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
So, any other input from the public? See none, then I will close the public hearing. Does council have any comments, questions, discussion? Again, this is an item that we've been talking about for a long time, and as we see our city grow, this is obviously the next step with a lot of work that's been put into this. Renata, thank you so much for a very good staff report.
I do have one comment, and I concur with Mr. Kerr that this is the low-hanging fruit, the next obvious expansion. But my comment just concerns the increasing transportation issues that we in Woodburn faced, and I know that's a bigger issue than just this piece of this parcel, but we need to constantly be taking that into consideration as we move forward. I know it was addressed in our findings, but transportation in particular, either some access to the south to 99 or to the freeway would be something that we need to really push for the future.
Can I just quickly, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor? Because I really appreciate those comments. It's, as you could probably guess, the number one issue that we hear in our department from the community about concerns about development and how it's addressed. It just so happens, in case some of you have forgotten, that staff is working right now on a transportation system plan amendment just for the southwest area. That's in process. I expect to have public hearings on that in the next probably 3 months or so. That's a modification to the comprehensive plan. It'll be changing basically our transportation master plan, and it's going to address the issues of, well, if this area is developed as it's being described, and now we're anticipating it for the next 40 years, what kind of traffic improvements do we have to make? Not just right in this immediate area, but even further north and east in terms of what are the impacts on Evergreen, what are the impacts on 214, what are the impacts on Butteville Road. And it's going to have very specific recommended improvements that have to happen there. And then it's going to have recommended funding recommendations and tools that we can do to pay for those improvements. That helps guide and steer us when development comes in to say, we know what kind of improvement we're going to need in terms of transportation here when an applicant walks in the door. And of course, it helps us with our long-range planning that we do for our transportation system plan. So it's really hard to get in front of it. You're right. All of our master plans slowly get adopted and edited over time. Knowing this was coming, we started that transportation system plan update probably maybe even before we did the UGB. So it's in progress. I'm working on that. Again, we're a few months out from we have a consultant working on it. And one of the things it's going to look at is what a potential limited interchange would be at I-5 at this location around Parr Road.
I'm sorry, Chris, what was that?
Did I let that out of the bag?
Oh, we're talking out loud about that now in public? Okay, go ahead.
But so looking at a variety of alternatives for transportation, and one of them really has to be, is there an opportunity for it? Obviously, that's an ODOT decision, but it's something that we do think is important enough to analyze, and we're going to get feedback from ODOT. They're going to run through their modeling about what would that do? What kind of impacts would a limited sort of interchange at that area have? It doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, but this is that long-range planning process that we have to kick off.
The other thing, too, in support of this effort, council may recall, is that the city did work with Marion County to obtain jurisdictional control of Butteville with the idea that the intersection here at Trailer World will ultimately be realigned as a result of this particular project to be a safer intersection and provide better access. That'll be another main feature in addition to east and west connectors. So I think council can expect to see that. It's one of the things we talk about when people raise concerns about transportation in the southwest corridor that we're talking about.
Okay, any other discussion? Councilor Morris, do you have any comments, questions?
I don't, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Then, moving on, I'd like a motion.
Yes, I do. I moved we tentatively approve legislative amendment LA 24-01 adopting a comprehensive plan map amendment based on the analysis and findings, Exhibit A, and hold the first reading of Ordinance 2633 to implement the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Counselor Morris?
Aye.
Counselor Cantu?
Yes.
Counselor Wilk?
Yes.
Counselor Schaub?
Yes.
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Then, thank you for that. Moving on. To general business. Nope, we just took care of the first item, right? So we do not,
So you'll still want to introduce the council bill so we can conduct
Yeah.
the first reading.
okay. Council Bill number 3264. Will you introduce that?
Yes, I will. An ordinance adopting legislative amendment 2024-01 for comprehensive plan map amendment to incorporate previously established urban reserve area.
Council Bill 3264 has been duly introduced and being an ordinance requires 2 readings. May we please have the first reading by title only if there's no objection?
Council Bill number 3264, an ordinance adopting legislative amendment 2024-01, LA 24-01, for comprehensive plan map amendment to incorporate previously established urban reserve area, URA.
Thank you. And the second reading will take place after Marion County Board of Commissioners has had their hearing on this matter, come back to us at a later date. So, moving on to Council Bill number 3265.
Council Bill number 3265 is an ordinance granting a cable television franchise to Wave Division 7 LLC and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Council Bill number 3265 has been duly introduced, and being an ordinance does require 2 readings. May we please have the first reading by title only, please, if there's no objection?
Council Bill number 3265, an ordinance granting a cable television franchise to Wave Division 7 LLC and declaring an emergency.
We've had our first reading of Council Bill number 3265. May we now have the second reading, again by title only, if there's no objection?
Council Bill number 3265, an ordinance granting a cable television franchise to Wave Division 7 LLC and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am going to be covering the Wave franchise, and this is essentially a replacement of the current cable franchise for Wave. I believe we also do have a representative from Wave that is available online to answer any questions that the council may have. Jim Rao was essential in carrying on negotiations with Wave, as well as we have a right-of-way manager that helps us with negotiating new franchises. And so, in utilizing our team, we work on these renewals. As you'll see, we had a previous 10-year non-exclusive telecommunications franchise with Wave. That allows them to operate, maintain, and provide wireline cable television services within the city of Woodburn. That franchise, the previous one, expired in March of last year. That's not uncommon. Usually we just continue operations while we negotiate a new contract, and we've reached that new contract this evening for your consideration, and this would be a new 5-year agreement. It's very, very similar in terms of the terms and conditions related to the franchise fee, which is 5% of the gross revenues, as well as construction-related provisions, requirements for undergrounding, insurance that you would have seen in the previous Comcast cable television franchise that was brought to the council just a few years ago. So generally, these agreements look and feel very similar because that's what's required under the law, that we treat these similar business types the same. So again, we negotiate these contracts so that these businesses are available and can operate and utilize specifically the right-of-way to install their infrastructure.
Okay.
any questions that I can answer. Again, I believe that there is a representative from WAVE that is available online as well.
First, do we have any questions of McKinsey? So, David, do you have any comments? I'm sorry, I can't read your last name, but please.
Yeah, hey there, folks. David Von Moritz, First Down Broadband. No comments. This was a fairly straightforward renewal. We're happy to be in the city of Woodburn and happy to continue that presence.
Thank you. So this is similar to what we have with Comcast and doing the same job, I take it. How does someone determine whether they go with Comcast or WAVE when they come to Woodburn?
Sure. So, these are non-exclusive franchises rather than being exclusive. So, they still provide and allow for competitive businesses to operate in the same, you provide the same type of services to individuals in the community, and then there's kind of a minimum standard that they have to meet under the franchise agreement. But after that, it kind of comes down to personal choice. Things like any consumer is going to consider, like price of services, different maybe types of channels that are available, and general satisfaction with customer service locally. There is still a requirement under our franchise to have a local presence, which means, a store with in-person customer service that's open a certain number of hours per week. So, that it should be the same with these competitors.
I saw that. It's within 20 miles of the city?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, somebody that's, right downtown versus 20 miles away, that could be, something a consumer considers.
Or somebody that wants to pay their bill or, reaction. Since we have different agreements, I'm assuming that the city is somewhat impartial on who our citizens go with. We, being a fair-minded
yeah, we don't.
with our suppliers, we cannot.
We do not promote or, favor any. The idea is that these, even though these are negotiated contracts with the service providers, that generally they have very, if not the exact same terms and conditions, so that they are treated equally by the city in terms of their operations here in town. Again, so that they can provide that service to consumers on an equitable basis.
Any other questions?
Well, I do have a question. It's good to have competition. It's good to have multiple providers. My question to the WAVE representative, Mr. Van Moritz, is your office going to remain in Woodburn? I noticed you moved next door from the location of many, many years, but any plans to move out of the city?
No plans to move out of the city. I think that location generally has been pretty important for us, and we intend to stay there.
Great. Thanks. Thank you. We appreciate you being here, and look forward to a good 5 years with you, at least, maybe many more.
I do have a
question. Well, that's the plan. I wanted a longer term on it, but that's all we were allowed.
Okay.
I do have a question. When I first got on the council, we had we went over to WAVE and we had a program. Will that ever be reinstalled or no? It's just gone. All right, never mind.
I was on the board for the
Yes,
for the community access, and I think the internet probably
did that. Okay.
Yeah. There is a specific provision in this franchise agreement, as well as in our other cable franchises here in the city, that basically acknowledges that the city itself no longer sponsors or supports a PEG channel, and that's public educational and government access channel. But if for whatever reason we were to reactivate a PEG channel, these contracts do consider that, and they do include what we consider or what we call or classify as a PEG support fee. To support that channel if it were to ever come back. So, we have considered that. We just don't believe or know that it will happen.
Well, I read that in the contract here, so I was just curious. Okay.
Councilor Morris, did you have any comments or questions?
I would just echo Councilor Schwab's discussion about the public access. That was fun when it lasted, and unfortunately, yeah, I think YouTube broke it.
Thank you. And not seeing any other questions, discussion. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Wilk?
Yes.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Schaub?
Yes.
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Cantu?
Yes.
So Council Bill 3265 has been duly passed. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Council Bill number 3266.
Council Bill number 3266, resolution adopting the updated Woodburn Transit System Title VI program.
Thank you. Council Bill number 3266 has been duly introduced and is a resolution, and as such requires one reading. May we please have the reading by title only if there's no objection?
Council Bill number 3266, a resolution adopting the updated Woodburn Transit System Title VI program.
Thank you. Do we have a staff report?
I would say that any local government organization that receives public funding for transportation is required to maintain policies that enact the various titles of non-discriminatory requirements. So this is updating our policies. As council knows, we receive quite a bit of funding for our transit program, and this will keep us not only in compliance with state and federal law, but it also is the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. That's the law. Is it required for anyone that has anything to do with within the transit program to read the policy and be familiar with it?
We do ask our employees to read all of our policies and to be familiar with them.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Just two quick comments. First of all, maybe we can do it before it's been a year past its renewal date, before we do it next time. But the comment has to do with the fact that we have a large number of not only Spanish-speaking people and Russian-speaking people, but increasingly indigenous languages from Central America and Southern Mexico. Many of those languages are not even written languages, so compliance with Title VI becomes more complex in that situation. And I just simply want to acknowledge the fact that we do have, I don't know what our ridership is among indigenous people, but to the extent that we could do more outreach and let folks know about the availability of our public transport system. It's a great system, it's free, and the more that people are aware of it, I think the more ridership we'll have.
Thank you. Councilor Morris, any comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Then can we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Counselor Schaub?
Yes.
Counselor Wilk?
Yes.
Counselor Cantu?
Yes.
Say Council Bill 3266 has been duly passed. Thank you. Moving on to Council Bill 3267.
Council Bill 3267, it's a resolution to extend and provide municipal sewer services to the Russian Old Believers St. Nicholas Church property at 8702 Parr Road, Northeast, Woodburn, Oregon, located outside the corporate city boundaries.
Thank you. Council Bill 3267 has been duly introduced and is a resolution, and as such requires one reading. May we please have the reading by title only if there's no objection?
Council Bill number 3267, a resolution to extend and provide municipal sewer services to the Russian Old Believers St. Nicholas Church property, 8702 Parr Road, Northeast, Woodburn, Oregon, located outside the corporate city boundaries.
Thank you. It looks like we do have a staff report. Gentlemen?
Good evening. Again, Chris Kerr, Community Development Director. I'm here with Curtis Stoltz, Public Works Director. And I see online, just be aware that we also have some representatives, looks like from Lennar, and I think their attorney who submitted a letter that's in the record as well. I just thought I'd give a quick summary, answer a few questions about this particular topic. So again, in front of you is essentially a resolution for your consideration to permit the church property to connect to city sewer. They need to do this because of the adjacent Brighton Point residential subdivision. It's being built over the property, on property where the church's drain field is. So they need to relocate their septic and drain field system. They can't do it for a couple of reasons. Basically, because of their location, they're surrounded by city properties. You can see from the graphics that are in the staff report. They're surrounded on 3 sides by city property. And Brighton Point is just recently, Lennar, excuse me, has just recently installed water and sewer line down Parr Road along their frontage. So it's essentially legally available to them, and because they're located in the UGB and they're surrounded, the standard issue is if you want to get water and sewer from the city, you need to be annexed into the city before we provide it. We also have an agreement with Marion County, which essentially summarizes the same thing. That's our urban growth management area plan. Am I getting the right? I probably got the title incorrect. But essentially says the same thing. And what it does, it has the county discouraged from issuing those septic permits if you're within close proximity to the city and if the city can annex you in. And that's the case for what we have here. Now, that being said, it is unusual, and it's not our preferred situation. But there are some extenuating circumstances that I talk about, and they're addressed a little bit in the staff report. I think, first of all, I think it's important to understand why staff would support this particular resolution to allow this sanitary sewer hookup without an annexation at this time, subject to 2 important conditions. The first one is that the applicant actually tried to address this exact issue 2 years ago. It was always part of the plan to relocate that drain field onto the southern part of the church property in conjunction with the subdivision. Because of some errors on the applicant's part, they did the application sequencing incorrectly at the county. I think they let a certain septic tank or a certain septic permit expire at the county, and they came back in after the fact. Because that's happened, the church property is now surrounded by city property, and there's now a new sewer line in front of them. So I know that's a bit odd, and it is a bit unusual. I think the other consideration staff's thinking about is that, typically whenever the city doesn't annex property, and one of the big losses for them is they're not collecting any taxes from that property. Not that there aren't other reasons that you want to annex property in, such as getting public improvements, making sure they meet all of our city municipal code requirements, et cetera, pay their fair share, as it were. But in this case, churches wouldn't be subject to property taxes. So there wouldn't be a loss on that avenue. And the last part, and I think this is important, and I call this out, is that throughout the whole planning process, Lennar and the church have been transparent about the fact that they've always intended to simply keep the church property unannexed on its own and to move their drain field onto their property. In fact, as part of that, Lennar even annexed the frontage along the front of the church property. So think of the Parr Road right-of-way has been annexed into the city, and they're doing some minimal improvements in front of the church property. And that leads to the fact, what staff's main concerns and the 2 conditions that we would recommend, should you decide to adopt or approve the resolution, would be to, first of all, require the full improvements along that right-of-way, as if the property were being developed. So if this church property were to come in tomorrow and develop, we would require a full 6-foot landscape strip, 6-foot sidewalk along the frontage, as opposed to the sort of bare minimum 4.5-foot sidewalk only that's being proposed right now. So we think that's critically important. Long term, when you think about what's going to happen in this area, we've talked a lot about it. We think a lot of development's going to be happening over the next few years here. We want to make sure that we, at bare minimum, get all the right-of-way we need, we get all the full street improvements that we need, from the sidewalk to the landscaping. And that would The condition that's proposed in the resolution would have that happen now before the church were to get hooked up. The other part is we have while these are unusual, these hookups outside annexations, they aren't totally unheard of. We've done 3 or 4, I think, since I've been here in the last 7 or 8 years. We have a requirement that they have to pay 1.5 times the current sewer rate that a resident would, which is sort of a penalty for not annexing. That's sort of a quick summary. Again, there's a long history to it, and it gets a bit convoluted. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know Curtis can as well, but that's sort of the staff summary as to how we got here and what our recommendation is. And again, the applicant is here with some representatives.
Do you have anything to add?
No.
Any questions for Chris?
I do have one question. Let me start with a comment. So this property will now be surrounded by the city, and that concerns me, just generally, in terms of the expansion of the city. It's not good, in my opinion, it's not good public policy to have enclaves that are not county. As we heard from the earlier hearing, getting the county to respond is problematic. You know, the church isn't open 24/7, but if there are problems in the parking lot in an area, and it's also going to be surrounded by a subdivision, right? It's all going to be residential. It's an attractive nuisance, and not as a term of art, but a concern that I have about having this unincorporated piece remaining. So that's just a general. The fact that you say we've done this in some other instances gives me a little bit of support for allowing it here, but I don't think it's generally a good way for us to conduct business. I have a more specific concern and a question. My understanding is that the city originally required not just the public access, but also a public utility easement. And we've dropped that requirement, is that correct?
We have. So when we've had a lot of discussions with Lennar and the representative on the issue. The sort of initial thought was, let's just get the full improvements that we would ask for any other applicant in front. And that includes all the things that I talked about, from the full right-of-way requirement, vacation, as well as the improvements that you see from landscaping, street trees, whatever storm requirements go in there, as well as the sidewalk, the full 6 feet. And what we typically require for private development when they come in the door is to get a 10-foot public utility easement on the back side of that. That was I think more problematic than even the other items for the representatives who we'll probably hear from. And they came back and said, you know, we can spend the money, we can do those public improvements and make those happen, but that public utility easement was much more problematic for them. I'll let them answer why it was more problematic for them. I can assume it's a land issue, right? Once that becomes a public utility easement, it can be torn up by the public for public utility purposes. And that sort of precludes the kind of things you can do in it. So we're talking about 10 extra feet of land. I think where the city came back and thought that we could live with that particular provision not being included is because by the fact that Brighton Point, which is the Lennar development, has already been developed with all of the utilities that they need around the property are already being provided either on Brighton Point's property or within the actual right-of-way. So we already have the water and sewer line that we often put in the public utility easement next door. In this case, we have them in the street. And what's a bit unusual here is PGE's easement is on the west side of this property. Oftentimes we need extra utility easements along a property line for something like PGE's improvements. In this case, it's just unusual. You've probably noticed they're not transmission lines, but they're these oversized lines and an oversized easement on the west side of Parr Road. So we feel, and this is something we work with our Public Works Department about pretty closely, that we're comfortable not requiring that 10-foot easement along the church property at this time. Now, when that property does develop and comes into the city or wants to develop and has to come into the city, we could get it at that point.
We would require that at that point, yeah, definitely.
That's pretty much the reason why we're comfortable with that
Yeah,
particular
yeah.
provision not being included.
Yeah, it's on those houses on Brighton Point, that's the back of those properties. Those properties don't, we don't have front yards there. So it's not like you're driving down a street and you've got driveways that turn in and you've got utility boxes and everything else there. The water meters, all that kind of stuff are on the other side in the actual development. And we're gonna have an industrial facility across the street. So we're not gonna have a lot of like individual water services going across the street and, cable lines and those type of things. All of that kind of stuff is within the development. And as we develop further to the south, that's gonna move through that development south, not necessarily down Parr Road. So it's not as critical to have that 10-foot utility easement at this time.
We have, anything else?
Just questions if you have them.
Mr. Stevenson, Garrett Stevenson is online. Do you have comments?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Garrett Stevenson. With me tonight is Roseanne Johnson, who's Entitlements Manager for Lennar. There's not a lot I want to add to the very good staff report that Chris laid out for you, but I did want to address one comment that I heard about why, maybe this is different and what is the city not getting that it could otherwise get. And what I would like to sort of highlight is that we worked really hard with staff to come up with a workable compromise on this. If the city were to insist on annexation, for example, there would be no requirement because the church is not redeveloping for those frontage improvements that Lennar has voluntarily offered to build. And so it's not perfect for either party, but each party is giving a little bit up and getting something in return. In this case, the city has agreed to give up the annexation requirement. Of course, if the property were to redevelop, I assume it would be required to annex anyway. So it's going to remain a church. If it becomes anything else, at that point it annexes in. But what the city gets out of the compromise is the full frontage improvements along Parr Road, which it wouldn't otherwise get if it was simply, no, to get water service, you need to annex. And I've done a lot of annexations over the years, sewer service. I've done a lot of annexations over the years, and there's a number of reasons why this happens from time to time. It is actually not entirely uncommon with churches because they don't generate any revenue, they typically don't redevelop, and for one reason or another, a lot of times churches don't want to annex. It's also very common with health hazard issues and a couple of other really interesting property development scenarios that aren't really important for our purposes tonight. But I do want to emphasize that it is rare but not entirely uncommon. But we think, given that the city's going to get these full sidewalk, corridor, and frontage improvements that it wouldn't otherwise get if it insisted on annexation, we believe it's a good compromise for both the city, because what the city's getting is something extremely tangible, and that is a complete sidewalk network along Parr Road. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might otherwise have, but we encourage you to support the compromise that staff and Lennar have come to on this. It's taken a little bit of time to get here, but we're pretty happy with where we ended up.
Okay, thank you. And Roseanne Johnson, do you have comments, something you'd like to add?
Nothing to add right now, Mayor Lonergan, but happy to answer any specific questions about Lennar in this role. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
We don't have any representatives of the church here tonight, do we? I'm just curious as why they are opposed to annexation, why they don't want to annex, what information you might have about that.
I mean, he specifically commented that churches don't want to annex. Churches specifically, so what would be, we don't know their reasoning?
The only reasoning I have came from Mr. Stevenson. It came in a letter. I have not had contact with them myself. I'm looking at Curtis. I don't think he has either. They may be able to speak to that.
And I think you noted in your report too that this sets some sort of a precedence, right? That we're allowing the connection to city services without making them annex. And so in the future, or you also noted too here tonight that we've done it in the past, and then in the future, I'm sure somebody else is gonna want the same, well, you did it here. So, I mean, I know you've addressed it, but.
It's an excellent point. Look, I'm the community development director. I want properties in the UGB to develop, to be brought into the city so that they meet our development code, our municipal code, they pay taxes, they become part of the city, right? That's the goal. The exception, and they need to be rare ones, is when we extend these services, because it's no secret that the best chip we have for having people annex into the city, because it goes without saying that many people don't want to annex into the city because they don't want to be subject to all the things I just rattled off, is then they can develop their property, right? And to do that, they usually want water and sewer. So it is rare, and we don't do it often, and believe me, no one advocates stronger at City Hall than me for not providing these and extending these services. I really think that there are some unusual circumstances here. It is rare, and it was part of the plan. If you'd have asked me 2.5 years ago, what's the plan for the church? We would have said, well, the plan was to move that drain field over, and we wouldn't be having this conversation at all.
Right.
Had a permit gone through 2 years ago at the county correctly and been finalized, none of this would be an issue. And we'd be getting all these pieces without the improvement. So I think that makes it a little bit different. And you haven't seen me up here before advocating for this. So
improvements meaning the sidewalk and the full street improvement across the front. It would have looked a little funky had we not got what we're getting now. When we just, the public looks at it and says, you built a road, but why not here? So,
no.
I do have one additional question, and that is, it does concern police response to the church site, if necessary in the future. Is there a way that the city can respond to calls from neighbors about, something going on at the church?
Yeah, I might take a shot at that. First, we have the police chief here. Also, our incoming police chief, temporary, is here too. I'll take a shot at it, and if you're welcome to add any comments. So, one of the things I would point out is that typically churches are also property tax exempt. So even bringing this property to the city would not necessarily mean there would be another property tax revenue or stream coming to the city or the other taxing districts. If there is some sense of urgency, if there's a crime that requires, if there's violence or a crime where there's life at risk, then I think you'd find that the Woodburn Police Department would show up and support any 911 call for that type of a service. If it's other types of calls for service that typically would require Marion County, then that would be up to Marion County to respond to that site. It's not unlike other properties we have along Highway 99, for example, that we're also trying to avoid, where the sidewalk stops and then starts up again, and we have these kind of weird pockets where Marion County has jurisdiction and we don't. But if it's a nuisance call, it's probably going to be the Marion County Sheriff Department. But if there's life at risk, if it's a critical incident, then I would say the Woodburn Police Department would respond and support, given our proximity and as well as the other first responders in the area.
That's helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councilor Morris, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, I appreciate all the parties coming together with a compromise. I know this has been on the books for several weeks too, so it seems like it is at least an understanding, maybe not a great understanding, but it's a compromise. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Schaub?
Yes.
Counselor Cantu?
Yes.
Counselor Wilk?
I'll hold my nose and vote yes.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Council Bill 3267 has been duly passed. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Council Bill 3268.
Council Bill 3268, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget and approving transfer of $1,360,000 from contingency
to transfers out in the general fund for the interagency loan to the Urban Renewal Agency.
Council Bill 3268 has been duly introduced and is a resolution, and as such requires one reading. May we please have the reading by title only if there's no objection.
Council Bill number 3268, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget and approving transfers $1,360,000 from contingency to transfers out in the general fund for the interagency loan to the Urban Renewal Agency.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a staff report.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a few points here, and I'll throw it over to Tony. But this is, we've covered some of this tonight. This is the final step of putting these financial structure in place to acquire property for the purposes of affordable housing project in collaboration with a nonprofit. The financial report that you had earlier under the consent calendar showed the cash position of the city, and we get our quarterly financial investment updates. And what you see is that the city does have revenues available to us in our investment funds that we are going to then transfer to the Urban Renewal Agency to acquire this project. The Urban Renewal Agency will pay back the general fund over a period of time, which means that the property taxpayers have very little risk in this particular resolution and supplemental budget, making these funds available for the Urban Renewal Agency. So I like to simplify it and simply say that the city is trying to invest in affordable housing as opposed to the market, and that it is a very low risk investment based on the structure we have with the Urban Renewal Agency and its ability to repay the general fund. The supplemental budget here allows that to happen. It's the last piece we have in place, and I'll let Tony take it from there.
Okay.
There's not much more to say. Tony Turley, Finance Director, for the record. Because this is less than a 15% transfer from the contingency, it doesn't require a public hearing, so that's why we're not having a public hearing. And we're in good shape with our investments. We have the money. We had an investment mature, and so from our long-term investment, so this will come out of that investment. We'll be able to pay for that without compromising it. We don't have to sell an investment to be able to do this. We were able to watch the maturities that we had coming due, so we were able to do this cash flow without compromising any of our other investments.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Cantu?
Yes.
Counselor Wilk?
Yes.
Counselor Schaub?
Yes.
Council Bill 3268 has been duly passed. Moving on to Public Arts and Mural Committee Scholarship Program. Something new that we've been doing a lot of work on. We have you given a report to us before?
Believe it or not, no.
I didn't think so. This is the first time this is new for our assistant city attorney.
Yes, indeed.
It's good not to have to hear from a lawyer.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Chris Kilmer, Assistant City Attorney, here today on behalf of the Woodburn Arts and Murals Committee. So the background on this project is back in roundabouts June, the Arts and Murals Committee, which, as you know, sometimes funds various arts projects around the city, including the new mural just a block up on the Public Works building, the bronze sculpture in the plaza, and various other murals around the city. Started thinking about ways in which the committee could better support youth artists. And as part of that conversation, the committee determined that they wanted to explore the possibility of funding a arts scholarship for graduating Woodburn High School students. So then over the next few meetings, the committee met and started to work out kind of the parameters of what that scholarship would look like, various kind of basic things like how much money would be funded, how many scholarships would be funded, and then kind of into the more nitty-gritty details of exactly how one would apply, what the eligibility requirements would be, that sort of thing. And ultimately that culminated in the last meeting of the Arts and Murals Committee, which was on October 16th with the committee, meeting and recommending that City Council approve the scholarship application program and the guidelines that have been provided in tonight's agenda packet for all of you. I won't go through everything, in too much detail. I'll just go through a couple of things. So eligibility-wise, you have to be a graduating senior at Woodburn High School. You submit an application, and we've tied that application to demonstrating kind of the impact that Woodburn has had on that artist's career. So there are some questions in the packet that particularly get at that, and those questions also get at asking that applicant how they think that the city can better incorporate public art into the fabric of our community. So we want to get that feedback from that artist, as well as learn about how that artist's art has been influenced by this unique place that we live. And then the student will submit one letter of recommendation from a Woodburn High School faculty teacher, and then a portfolio with, I think we said, no more than 7 pieces of visual art. And the kind of process, the way this is going to work, is that they're going to, the application materials will go to Woodburn High School arts faculty first. They have provided and developed a really wonderful rubric, which is also in your materials, through which they're going to score the applicants, and then they will choose the top 3 applicants and refer them to the Arts and Murals Committee. At that point, the Arts and Murals Committee will review the applicants, determine one scholarship awardee of a $3,000 scholarship, and then 2 scholarship awardees of a $1,000 scholarship each. And then they'll go through, as part of that process, and do interviews with the applicants, review their portfolios, and then once that determination has been made, the applicants will give a presentation to City Council at a subsequent City Council meeting. And one piece that the committee was really excited about is we're going to try and put together a gallery showing at the Bungalow Theater to really highlight the works of those students. Certainly the 3 awardees, maybe even some others, really trying to show that important work that those students are doing. Financial impact, it's a $5,000 scholarship. There is funding in the general fund. It's in non-departmental funds, in grants. So it's been budgeted, not specifically for this purpose, but there is money in the budget available for it. And with that, just available to answer any questions you have. And I think Jamie Jonk is online as well, who may be able to answer other questions as well.
Jamie, do you have anything to add?
No, other than I think this is a great opportunity to really connect the city and our school district in a project that's really heartfelt, both by the Public Arts and Murals Committee as well as the art teachers and the representatives on our committee from the school district. It's really been a passion, and I'm really pleased to see the embracing of our students. There are some extremely talented young people in our school district, and anything we can do to help foster and grow not only the relationship with the city, but with the public overall, I think is essential.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our council president also is chair of the Arts and Mural Committee. I'd like to hear from her.
I'm very excited about this program. Chris, I want to thank you for all of your work on this. And Catherine Johnstone, she is a teacher in the art department at the high school, and she came and really helped us with forming the requirements, I say. And also Tony Manetti, he's a college and career counselor at the school. So with all this collaboration of all of these talented people, we were able to come up with this wonderful program, which will be an asset to the city because hopefully these students will display their art for our public to see.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank Mayor Lonergan because he was all for this and even suggested it in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. But yeah, this committee and I'm very appreciative of the whole art department at the high school was part of this. Brenda Bravo, who's also on the committee, was part of that. Any other comments, discussion? Councilor Cornwell, you're part of that committee. What do you think?
I'm eager to see how it all turns out, how successful we are in getting involvement, as well as who turns up, who is successful.
What types of art do you think we were going to see?
What types?
Yeah, I mean, we're not just looking at paintings. We could be looking at sculptures, could be looking at jewelry, could be looking at...
I think a lot of paintings.
Paintings?
Yeah, they like to do portraits and maybe some photographs even, I'm not sure.
Right. Interesting.
Awesome. They'll have meaning behind them, and even if you don't know the meaning, as most art, these youth are very deep when they come to communicate through their art. It's very
Thank you. Any other questions?
It's a great idea. I like it. And, you know, just having been recently to the high school, there's a lot of nice art hanging on the walls from students.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of talent in this community.
We do. And then they also work with the Art Center. The Art Center's working with kids coming up, and they have shows there. Councilor Cantu?
Great program. I'm excited.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the Public Arts and Mural Committee to proceed with offering a Woodburn Visual Arts Scholarship Program to graduating seniors at Woodburn High School and allocate $5,000 from the city's general fund to fund the program.
Second.
The intent is not to have a one-time only shot. This is, we're looking at a continuing annual program. So get that out there. So all in favor, signify with an aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you. Do not have any other business. Do not have anything else from the Planning Commission. They've done a lot of work here lately. Moving on to the City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recently attended the League of Oregon Cities Conference with several staff and Councilor Wilkes. It was one of the better ones, I'd have to say. I think there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 local elected officials and staff and community leaders from all across the state. As one of the sessions that was provided for the conferences here was Maricela, Jamie Jonk, and Sean Waite, the city manager of Hubbard, talking about our regional tourism program. It was well attended and lots of questions. I'd like to say that Woodburn, I think, is on the radar. I spent a lot of time fielding questions about Woodburn, sort of the financial trajectory that we have been on, the housing development and the industrial development seems to be envious of a lot of communities who would like to have those opportunities available in their communities. So that was uplifting. I always feel good from the conference about the types of things that we're working on versus the types of things some other communities are struggling with. So all in all, it was good, and I hope that next year you can all attend. I think you would find it. For me, there's that. Is it just me, or do you guys hear that?
I don't hear that.
Is it? Am I the one doing this?
You're good.
Okay. I've been asked a little bit about the permanent position of the police chief with Marty Pilcher going to another community. And so I signed an administrative directive this past week that will appoint Jason Milliken as our acting police chief for an indefinite period of time as we evaluate and assess the needs of the police department and the community. I anticipate there will be a more formal process to make a permanent hire in a matter of months. It will likely be a process similar to prior processes we've had that with community involvement. I'll ask city councilors to participate in that selection. You know, hiring a police chief is one of the most important positions that we fill here at the city. Not that the other department heads aren't equally as important, but the police department has a particular relationship with the community that is a little unique. And so we're going to contemplate on that. We're going to work on it. I've been talking with incoming acting chief Milliken about how we're going to take a look and work together towards that end. And I'll keep the city council posted on the progress as we move forward in that. But there will be a process that will include public participation prior to making a permanent appointment at some point in the future. I think I'm not going to be here for Marty Pilcher's last day. I'm going to be out of town. But I did want to take just a moment to publicly thank Marty for his service to the city. He's been with the city, as we know, for 7 years. I'd like to say that Marty is one of the most honest people I know and is a leader of integrity. He has made difficult decisions and has moved the department forward and kept momentum moving in the type of direction that the community and the city has expected the department to achieve. And for that, I am really grateful. It's been a real privilege to work with Marty. I'm going to miss him. It is a bittersweet that we're losing such a capable individual from the city, but it's also exciting to see one of our employees going to a community that is, you know, more challenging in many respects, a bigger and professionally kind of an advancement. So we're really proud of Marty, and we've benefited from him here, and I wish him the best of luck in the future. So thank you, Marty. And finally, I've talked to the mayor, and I've asked our city attorney if we could call for a quick executive session. I promise it won't take long at the conclusion of this meeting. Okay. And Mr. Mayor, we've also neared completion of the remodel downstairs that has built out space in what has just been a giant empty room to accommodate our staffing needs. And if the council would like to take 10 minutes or so after this meeting before the executive session, I'd be happy to show you that project. That was approved by the city council. It's been budgeted for and planned for some time, and it's nearing completion. And we'd be happy to show it to you if you'd like to walk through.
Thank you. I know a lot of work's been done down there. I've heard a lot of construction work for the last, 6-8 months? It seems most of the year.
Yeah, it's exciting that we were able to invest in this room in City Hall, and it's somewhere in the distant past. People saw that at some point in the future this building would need to have more space, and there was a large unfinished room for decades downstairs, and it just happens that on our watch, as this city grew, it was our charge to finish that work, and so it's been done.
Okay, so we'll do the mayor and council reports, and then have a quick break downstairs, and then go into executive session before we adjourn. Councilor Morris, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, Mr. Mayor, I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cantu?
Nope, nothing to report.
Councilor Welk?
So we all know we live in a great city, and just a couple of things. I did go to the League of Oregon Cities conference last week, and that just reinforced how well run our city is. Talking to other councilors, staff, and mayors, it's really clear that we're the envy of many other jurisdictions, and it's good to be part of that. And then bringing it on back down, I was able to attend our trunk or treat event, which again the city sponsors, and it was just such a blast to see the kids and some adults all dressed up, and I was even able to snag a couple of pieces of candy myself. So just a great event, and I was glad I could get down there for it.
That is a good event. Thank you for sharing. Councilor Cornwell.
I was also at the trunk or treat. I did not see you unless you were dressed up. Were you the dinosaur?
What costume?
You were the dinosaur, right? it was just packed, and I think as many adults were dressed up as children were dressed up. It was very well attended.
Oh, excellent. Councilor Corrales.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Shaw.
I don't have anything to report other than that I was so disappointed I couldn't go to the LOC conference because I've gone every year. And so next year I'm going.
I also had other commitments and could not make it, but I've gone in the past, I know it is. I encourage everyone that can make it next year to do that. The only thing I have is to remind everyone there is an election going on, and hope everyone gets out to vote. And we do have a ballot measure that I certainly am still looking for support on. We've heard from a lot of people around the city that are in favor of it, but we need all the votes we can get. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. 8:40. Let's try at 8:50 to be in the back room for the executive session.
Mr. Mayor, we need a motion to enter executive session
you're
under
right.
the
My
statute.
mistake. I need a councilor to make a motion to proceed into executive session based on the authority of ORS 192.660-2-H.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor Morris. Okay. Okay.